Thank you for everybody for attending and welcome to our 2021 Virtual Ag Conference. We are excited about the lineup we put together today. My name is Jeremy Dutch. I'll be your host for today's event. This virtual seminar concept is something that we're going to do more of in this post-COVID world to try to help continue to add value to our customers. So be on the lookout for more to come. If you're new to German American State Bank, I'd ask you guys to visit our website at germanamericanstatebank.com. That's all one word, all spelled out, to learn more about us. We're a local bank servicing the agriculture and rural communities in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. We strive to give quick loan decisions, add value, and to be a trusted partner. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you're inclined, please go to those three platforms, follow us, like us, for more updates and things that we're going to be posting here in the future. Today's seminar is actually being recorded, and we're going to be posting it to our YouTube channel. So if you in the future would like to reference back to this, you will see this on today's materials and this recording on our YouTube channel at a later date. Before we get started and kick this thing off, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items. We've placed everyone on mute to limit interference, and we've also disabled everybody's video to help with bandwidth and faster speeds and better quality of presentations. If you've used your phone to call in and instead of logging in on the laptop or computer screen, and you have to take a call, please just hang up and call back in at a later date. If you put us on hold, we will hear your hold music on the presentation and can't do a darn thing about it. So make sure you hang up and call back if you have to take a call. Another thing, basically, if time allows, during our segments of our presenters, we're going to do a short Q&A section of the presentation. So if you want to ask a question at any time throughout the presentation, on the bottom part of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. When you hit that Q&A button, you can type in your question, and we will read the questions to the presenters from there and do our best to answer what we can in the time allowed in each presenter's 20-minute segment. So to kick things off, we're going to start this with Greg McBride from Allendale Incorporated. Greg is a registered commodity broker with Allendale Incorporated. He's been with the McHenry-based firm for over 12 years. In addition to providing trading and marketing advice to ag producers from all over the country, Greg hosts the Allendale Market Talk podcast and is a frequent guest analyst for groups such as the Iowa Agribusiness Radio, RFD TV, and Sirius XM Radio. So please give Greg a warm welcome. And Greg, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate you letting me in here. Welcome everybody, and just got to share this disclaimer with everybody for my own compliance purposes. So as we move forward, I will be kind of moving a little bit fast. Generally, it takes us about 30 to 45 minutes per corn and bean segment to do these things. So if you have questions, obviously ask them and we'll try and get to them. If I don't have time to at the end of it, just go ahead and call me or send me an email. All my information is right here for you as well. So let's kick things off and just go into what we're going to be looking at as far as our weather outlook for this year. This just came from Drew Lerner of World Weather Incorporated. He did our conference a couple of weeks ago. This is what he's looking for. Looking into the spring, we are going to see temperatures normal to above normal in the Midwest. We do look for some precipitation, so we're not going to continue that dry spell that started last late summer and into the fall. But as we move into summer, and this is where it could get a little dicey as far as when this actually happens, we will start to dry out, and that could be a cause of concern depending on when this happens. If it's obviously during pollination or pod fill, that's a major issue as we could take some off the top for yield. So the temperature situation obviously could be an issue as well. For right now, I don't think we're going to be a major issue as far as heat or oppressive heat like we've seen in the past. But that dryness could be a concern, especially when you start to talk about the western corn belt and how dry they've been. Continuing that system could be an issue for overall yields, not just specifically here in northern Illinois. So let's get down to the actual numbers, and we'll kind of recap yesterday's USDA report. As you can see here, only one minor change. We increased the export demand for corn by 50 million bushels. That brings your overall ending stocks down by 50 million bushels to 1.5. The trade was actually looking to see about a 1.4, just shy of 1.4 billion carryout, and that's a little bit disappointing. And that's one of the reasons, if you look at the markets today, you're seeing them down a little bit. And the idea behind this change of 50 million bushels doesn't necessarily make a heck of a lot of sense. If you look at what we've seen over the last few weeks, and even for the entire marketing year so far, we are way above normal for corn sales at this point, and even to the point of the sales that China had. Or these purchases that China had as we were moving into the end of January, uh, we saw them buy about 6 million tons, which comes in roughly 200 to 250 million bushels. So if that's the case, at this point, the USDA is underestimating our export demand. Now, they do have a little bit of creative accounting when it comes to looking at the change or the decrease in imports for the EU and some of the other countries to offset that big increase from China. But at the end of the day, I do feel like we will continue to see that demand come in, and that should continue to hold prices, at least hold them firm. The one thing I will caution everybody to think about is, as we start to close out, or not necessarily close out, as we close out the March contracts and we start to look into the spring, we shift our focus from the old crop to the new crop, and that's where things could get a little bit dicey. And you look at last year, we had 10 million acres of prevent plant. The year before, nearly 20 million. So there will be acres that come back into the rotation that could add on to what we planted last year. We planted around 91 million acres of corn after what they originally thought was 97. So some of the numbers we're seeing as we move forward will look a little bit bearish on the new crop corn side of things. So this is Allendale's overall estimates for this for old crop and new crop balance sheet. You can see we're looking at about 93.5 million acres for this year. That's with some of the prices that we're seeing at an unusual time of year. That's with the acreage that I spoke about as far as prevent plant coming back into the fold. And then you've got to give a little bit of wiggle room to see some more bean acres, because obviously the beans have seen such a big move. So as we look forward, we do think that our ending stocks for the old crop will continue to come down because of that strong demand. So at some point, we do feel like between now and the end of the marketing year at the end of August, we will see this ending stock number come down to about 1.15, 1.2 in that area, which is fairly tight for corn. That number then becomes our beginning stocks. And if we plant 93.5 million acres, and we're just at a trend line yield, which is about 180 bushels an acre, we are going to see a production of over 15 billion, which as you start to build that will look like a 1.5 billion carryout, which is exactly where we're at for the old crop right now. This number is obviously our ending stock number. The problem with this is, when this first gets started, some of these numbers could be inflated. We could be looking at the first new crop number that we get in May turning into a 2.2 or higher carry out, 2.2 billion. So you could see some price pressure as we go into the spring and into planting, depending on what the USDA gives us for an acreage number. So at the end of March, we will be watching for those acreage numbers, and obviously those are always subject to change based on how spring weather is. So obviously this corn number is not wholly accurate. This was taken at about 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning, but this is what those numbers imply. So you see right here, we're at a 1.5 billion carryout. The price is $4.70 for that. If you look at our old crop prices, we are way above that. And I've been pointing this out with my customers for a long time, is that this is where the potential for a correction comes in on corn, is that you've got the idea that we are overvalued. So if you do not keep up with lowering these ending stocks, and let's say you just flatten out over the next few months, we could see this number slide back to that 470 area. That would be fair value. We could even go much below it. That's just how corn tends to work. Once it gets bearish or once it gets bullish, it goes beyond where we actually think it should. At the end of the day, we do feel like this is about where we should be trading, is this 1.1, 1.2 area. So this is something that if you're writing things down, this might be a handy guide for you to get an idea of what these ending stocks numbers could be as far as price, because obviously, as I talked about, the 2.2 billion could really put some pressure on things. And that's why I don't think we are devoid of pressure in these markets, even though we have this strong demand, especially from China. So let's take a look real quick at the old crop price patterns. And this is something that I've been pointing out to my customers along the way, is that, you typically do see a rally in January, and then you peak out right here. Well, this is first notice day for the March contracts. Comes in at the end of February, the last Friday in February, and by the time we get to the next week is about the time that we start to come down. And some of that is because we have to make a lot of cash decisions on old crop. You have rent, or you have seed payments to make, or other input payments to make. And then, like I said, you also start to turn your focus to that new crop side of things. And that selling pressure does hold true even in the 30-year, 15-year, and the shorter 5-year, until about mid to late April, before we start to really focus on where we're at as far as planting weather, and actually what the next couple of months looks for as far as actual growth weather. So here's an idea of what we're looking at as far as price projections for old crop. We do feel like we've probably topped this market, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go straight down from here. We could see some sideways chop back and forth until we get to the end of this month, maybe go up, retest those highs that we made just yesterday, and then come back down as we start to focus on that new crop. So the idea at this point is, if you still have old crop, it might be a good idea to have some of that priced here over the next few days. And if you plan on hanging on to it, you store and ignore, or however if you've got basis contracts but you don't really want to price that, look at buying some shorter term puts, maybe that April 530 put, trying to get it done for 20 cents or less, or go out further and bring your strike down to a $5 put. What that does is basically just set the floor on this April. That gets you to the end of March, and that covers you, less the 20 cents here, from $5.10 to anything below that. On the July side of things, because it's further out, it's going to cost a little more. You go a little under the money, you're good from 485. What you have to remember, in everything we've seen, these are still profitable levels. That's the important thing. Don't get to this area right here and say, what the heck am I going to do with my corn now? If we're sitting at 375 in May, we've all of a sudden gotten back to maybe break even or a little bit below that. So you got to be careful about that. This is just a recap of what I was just saying. I like the idea, and I've always been very animate with my customers about selling cash. Um, if you want to own it on paper, buy a call, buy the futures, something like that. But I think the idea is take that risk off the table. You know what your risk is on a call. If you buy a call, you can you're going to spend 15, 20 cents, whatever it is, but it's not going to get any worse. If the market goes down and you still have cash, that's money coming out of your paycheck. So looking at the December side of things, again, we do feel like there's more time to see higher prices. And as I showed you, if we do go dry, especially going dry into July and mid-July when we start to pollinate, we could see this number come up here again towards that $5 area. And that'll be something to watch for. Right now, that's not the case. That's not what we're looking for as far as weather. I think that situation goes a little bit further out. Could be even into next year's crop that we feel those effects. But upside about 475, 480. Downside about 375. So there is a reason to understand that there is still risk in this market. As bullish as everything looks, you still do have downside risk. And that's why it would behoove you to take a look at maybe buying that September short dated 460 put, selling a $5 call above it, and trying to capture a price that keeps you profitable this year. So we're going to try and get that done for about 10 cents. I think you can get it done today or very near today at that 10 cents. Obviously, we backed off of the highs that we had yesterday before the report. So we may have to adjust that, but I don't think there's any reason to panic on prices necessarily today. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. So.
Greg, you roughly get about 6.5 minutes left.
That's fine. I can get through the beans in a little bit quicker. So, looking at the corn, this is the 2008 contract, and if you look here at the February USDA report, this is where we were at to start that. 3 days after, so that would be today. We saw a big dip, and then by the time we got to that March timeframe, that early March timeframe, it sold off again. So that's something to pay attention to on these markets here. All right, so we'll switch over to the beans. I have no issue with yesterday's bean number. An increase in exports looks fine. I would be looking for maybe another increase in crush. We've been crushing for about a year and a half extremely strongly, so that'll be something to watch there. And as you go into commitments for beans, we know we've got strong demand that continues to look good. And with the problems that Argentina and Brazil are having, whether it's production or whether it's even just harvest at this point, we should continue to see those strong sales continue to come in. So as we look at the balance sheet for beans, the main point here is it remains tight. Even if you plant roughly 90 million acres of beans and you've got a record crop, a record yield on your hand, you're still talking about 200 million in carryout. So we roughly think we will see 100 million carryout. You could see some rationing of demand once you get down to those levels, but this would be the if we have production issues idea. And here's what it's going to look like. I'll just jump ahead and show you prices, but we are undervalued for where we're at for soybeans. If you look at today's prices, we're under $14. We're at about 120, 125 million bushels. We should be around $15. So that is another reason why if we do see the beans start to rally back up, that could pull the corn with it a little bit over the next few weeks. Upside on July beans, we feel like it's about 1550, but there is that risk again as you go into the spring and you start to look at planting in the new crop situation. You could pull this thing back down to another dollar lower than where we sit today. So got to be careful about that. We do feel like we will go into expiration pretty strong. Historical price, same deal. About that March 3rd, March 4th timeframe is when things start to fall off. That's on the old crop. So as we focus on new crop at the same time, that could be an issue. If we plant 91 million acres of beans, initially that's going to be bearish, but that ending stock number for new crop should not fall apart on us. I finish out here with, this is the 2008 that I was showing in corn earlier, but if you look here, 2008, we went up here, dropped off for a couple of days, and then by that time frame, we fell right back off. In November, upside 1450. We do feel like that will be on some spring weather issues, and maybe the faster we plant, the more likely we are to plant some corn. Again, you still have downside risk around that $10 mark. So quick ideas as far as your new crop strategies: get a little bit of cash sold at these levels. That anywhere from 1150 up to 1250 is still profitable. And then on spec positions, I want to try and keep it non-marginal. Just buy some calls, go a little bit further out of the money, but stay closer on the on when you do it. So if you buy at the end of March or the beginning of April, do it in the May contract, or do it into the June or July contracts. Appreciate you guys this time. Obviously had to go a little bit quick through this. So if you have questions, I will answer them. And if you do want to contact me afterwards to ask any other questions, I'm always available.
Thanks, Greg. We do have a question in the one question in the Q&A. I believe it was in relation to the implied prices based on carryout numbers there. Does that, do those implied prices reflect a weak dollar?
It does not, and that is something that we will also have to think about. If we start to break that dollar again, and there's potential that we could go and take out that 88 level or even lower, you could build some inflation into this market. We have not truly seen inflationary buying in our markets just yet. That dollar being in that 88 to 92 area keeps us right at that edge of before we start to see that inflationary buying. So if we do drop off again on the dollar, let's say it goes down to 86, 87, I would think that you could see that inflate those corn and bean prices.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the info. We don't have any other questions. I guess I'm looking here in the chat. I'm sorry, maybe there is one. Doesn't like it. Looks like it is. So I want to say thanks for the time, Greg. Always informative. If you'll do me a favor and just stop your screen share. Excuse me, just so that we can get the next presenter in. I greatly appreciate it. And again, if you have any other questions, you guys can reach out to Greg for one-on-one questions with him. So our next stop is Jennifer Polterman from Pol Agri Insurance. Jennifer's been selling crop insurance for more than 10 years. She started her own agency in 2015 and is licensed in both Illinois and Wisconsin. In addition to providing crop insurance, Jennifer is the Wisconsin director on the United Soybean Board since 2016. She's no stranger to ag, as she and her husband are part of a fifth-generation family farm that grows corn, soybeans, and has a farrow to finished hog operation. So with that, Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks for being on.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate being a part of this here. So I'll pull up my screen share. Can you see that?
Yep, we're good to go.
You got it? All right, great. So I'm going to cover some of the major changes that affect our farmers for crop insurance for this coming year for 2021. I'm going to touch on the ECO, the enhanced coverage option, QL, the quality loss option, some changes for the livestock insurance, and then just a quick summary on the ARC PLC program. So the ECO, the enhanced coverage option, new this year for 2021, is an option you can choose on your crop insurance application, and it provides area-based coverage for your portion of your underlying crop insurance policy deductible. So you can choose a 90 or 95% trigger level. It is a federal program, so it's federally subsidized at a 44% rate. And it is available with all plans of insurance and the majority of the crops. In our region, it does cover corn, soybeans, and wheat. So the ECO begins to pay when the county average yield or revenue falls below the 90 or 95%, depending on which level you choose. The full amount of the ECO coverage is paid out when the county average revenue falls to 86%. So again, this is based on area yields, not your individual yields. And that's important to remember, because you can experience an individual loss with the ECO and receive a payment there, but not on your individual APH on your farm. So another thing to remember is the county-based yields don't come out until June of the following year after harvest. And so if you do trigger an ECO payment, you won't get that payment until the following July. ECO works really well with the SCO, the supplemental coverage option, which came out in 2014. And so the ECO provides coverage where the SCO left off. So I hear a lot of buzz on the street about these additional options that farmers can choose. And ECO can be complicated. And so what we're hearing is that it would be most attractive to producers that produce higher than the county expected yields. Again, I have access to an ECO simulator. So if someone wants to know a little bit more about pricing and how it would work with your yields and your farms, depending on where our price ends up, I'd be happy to run some quotes for the ECO. So this I just wanted to show the comparison and the similarities between the SCO, again, came out in 2014, and the ECO, which is new for this year. They're both county-based. They both mimic your underlying plan. So you have to have an individual crop insurance plan in order to have this option. SCO is coverage from 86% down to your individual coverage level that you insure at. And the ECO is 95 or 90 down to the 86%. So SCO can only be used on PLC acres. The ECO, it doesn't matter which ARC or PLC you allocate, it doesn't affect it if you choose to have ECO. SCO is 65% subsidized and the ECO is 44% subsidized. So the QL, the quality loss option, is another option you can choose this year, and it allows an insured to increase their coverage by improving their APH for years in which their crop suffered a quality loss. So it replaces your actual yields based on post-quality production in your APH database with actual yields based on pre-quality.
All right, Ed. You know what? I know Jennifer, it sounds like she totally lost internet. She's going to try to get reconnected here. I'm going to stay in contact with her offline to see how she's doing with that. So sorry to put you on the spot here, but if we can go right to you. Oh,
yeah.
And we'll come back to her.
Right.
I can see you. Thanks for joining us.
Well,
so I'm going to just give you I'll give you a quick intro, Ed. And so Ed Casper is from Casper Ag Solutions. Ed's been involved in precision agriculture for over 10 years, and his specialty is corn planter performance. For several years, Ed had an e-commerce site for precision planting products, and as a result, got the opportunity to work with customers all over the United States, Canada, Ukraine, France, South Africa, and Mexico. Casper Ag Solutions recently has narrowed its focus to the local customers in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, and has broadened their approach to planter performance to include soil prep, seed testing, and how to measure overall performance. So Ed, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being on.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Yeah, we're sitting here in the office today, and this is how we do meetings. So we'll just make the best of it. A couple years ago, I put out my 10 commandments of corn planting, and it got quite a lot of attention on social media, as you might guess. But the number one commandment was plant in the dust, your bins will bust. Plant in the mud, your crop's a dud. So if you carry nothing else away from today, just remember that, because your grandpa probably taught you that, and it was as true back in the early 1900s as it is today. I sell all kinds of attachments and enhancements and planter makeovers and you name it. And I'll have people say to me, well, you don't really need that stuff. Well, you're right, you don't. If you have a big enough planter and small enough acres and you can cover your ground in very reasonable time, if you can plant in perfect conditions and get it all done real quick, the lesser attachments you need. But when you start talking about planter performance, you're getting after two things. You want as much control over your environment as you can. And number two, you need to get it done in a timely manner. So sometimes we need to buy speed. It's not for everybody, but you need to evaluate where you're at in your farming operation and what you want to get done. So those things are all well and good and great, but if we don't have the fundamentals, it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. So you can have a $10 million quarterback, but if your defense can't tackle, you're still going to be a losing team. So one of the things that we've done, and I'll try to move my camera here, hopefully get it into the shot, but this is a little jig that my buddy made up for me. And what we want to do is measure what we call the run out of a disc opener. So a lot of people will do.
Hey, Ed, just real quick, you might want to tilt. I don't know if you can tilt your camera down or something so we can see it all. There we go. Good. Now we can see it. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So a lot of people take their disc openers off and they measure them. And if they're 14 and a half or they're bigger, they go, we're good, slap them back on. Well, you might run into rocks during the previous year. I know where I farm, I have rocks. I've even seen brand new disc openers straight out of the factory measure poorly. So this was made up, but you can make your own with a piece of square tubing or something around your shop and set up a little dial indicator here. And we want to measure the run out of that disc opener. And I want it less than 40 thousandths. So when you flip this through, you check your measurements. If it's less than 40 thousandths, it's good to go on your planter. Then we're going to move over here on our row unit, and hopefully you can see that. And Jeremy, let me know if you need to change anything. But then we want to install.
Looks good, Ed.
Go ahead.
I said it looks good.
Okay. Then we want to install them on our shank on our row unit, and we want to do a calibration here. And I like to see a 2-inch gap. So we bring a business card up, we bring a business card down, we measure that gap, and I like to see about 2 inches on green and blue planters. If you're a Case IH planter, you have a very different setup with your disc openers. And I believe it's a 2 or 3 business card width. Like I say, that's a different setup. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build as perfect of a V trench as possible to place our seed. Seed prices are through the roof. Fertilizer prices are through the roof. We can't afford to waste our resources. So we want as good of a run out as we can on our disc opener. We want to install them on our shank, and we want to make sure that they're calibrated. This is stuff that we should all already know. When we talk about our gauge wheels, we want them set up firm against our disc opener. And there's a couple reasons why. It's not going to affect so much our planting depth, but what happens is as this gauge wheel is running around, if it is not pressed hard against our disc opener, if there's a gap there, we're collecting a lot of dry, powdery dust. And as that rolls around, if it's not up close to the disc opener, that dry, powdery dust is going to fall down into our perfect V trench. Well, what happens when you have a live seed, a live organism that you just placed into the ground, and you drop that dry, powdery dirt on top of it? You just killed it, whether you meant to or not. So basics number 1, basics number 2, basics number 3, this is going to get you off to a really good start. Now, as we continue, we look back at the back of this planter at our closing list. And most everybody, not everybody, but most everybody has this notch back here. Well, one thing that we've done, and you can buy these off of Amazon, it's about $40. And you can buy this scale and just get yourself a pry bar and hook onto this and see how many pounds it takes to lift this back unit up. And we want to measure the pounds of force on notch number 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you look at this planter unit, you assume that, well, they're all on notch 2, so they're all giving me equal pressure to close that trench. That is not the case. We want to be able to measure that downforce so that we know we're good. So we've worked real hard to make as good of a V trench as possible. We've dropped the seed in the correct place. Now we need to make sure that we close that trench to give that seed the best opportunity that we can to grow. So let's talk about our seed for a second, and I'm going to move back around here, and Jeremy, just shout at me if I'm goofy. One thing that I've noticed in the last few years is the quality of the seed is just as determinant in emergence as the quality of the planter. So I like to send our seed out for a saturated cold germ and a pericarp test. The cold germ tells you, is it an Eskimo or a beach bum? That's Greg Sauter's terms. If you get a bad cold germ score, that doesn't mean it's a bad hybrid. That doesn't mean you should plant it. That means you shouldn't plant it on April 16th. You're going to be disappointed. It's a beach bum, not an Eskimo. That means that hybrid, you might have to wait till May 5th. Now, if that's a 112-day hybrid, you don't want to wait till May 5th. You have some decisions to make, but now you have good data to help you with those decisions. The pericarp test is the coating of that seed, the outer layer. And if that's damaged, now we're flirting with disaster. Now, unless we are in perfect planting conditions, and well, you're in Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin, we always plant in the perfect conditions. You're gonna be flirting with trouble. And I got bit last year on a poor pericarp test, and that was how I learned my lesson. And now is the time to be sending this seed out to get these things done. So we have quality seed. We've fine-tuned some of the smaller things on our corn planter, maybe things that most people don't think about. We've planted into the dust. We feel really good. How do we know the job that we did? Well, you're going to go to Amazon and you're going to buy some of these different colored flags. And you may have heard on how to flag test, and Randy Dowdy taught me this 6 or 7 years ago. But what you do is let's say you plant on, I don't know, May 2nd. You plant corn on May 2nd. You go back out there every day about the same time. And that first day that you see seeds popping up, I want a specific colored flag next to those day 1 emergers. So if you're in 30-inch rows, 17 feet 5 inches, that's 1/1000th of an acre. Measure off 17 feet 5 inches and just watch that row. And day 1, they get a flag. Now I want you to record the temperature and come back 24 hours later. Which ones emerged on day 2? They get a different colored flag. Day 3, day 4, all the way up until you have all of your seeds accounted for. When I started with Precision 10 years ago, the mantra was, if we plant 34,000, we want 34,000 plants. Well, then it evolved to say, well, we want 34,000 ears. Well, then it evolved to say, we want 34,000 harvestable ears. We don't want little nubbins or little beer can ears. We want harvestable ears. How do we get there? We get there through measuring our emergence. We want our plants to emerge within 12 GDUs. At first we said 3 days, but that wasn't entirely accurate. And I've seen some neighbors, we've done it. He had a plant emerge on Monday and another one on Friday, and they were both equally harvestable ears because it was a cold snap. and they emerged within 12 GDUs. That's our goal. That's not easy to do, but that's our goal. And I promise you that if you measure your emergence, we can walk out in your farm on June 10th, June 15th, and what you have on June 15th is what you're going to have on November 15th. Yeah, we need rain, we need some cooperation, hopefully don't get a derecho, but if it's not there on June 10th, I guarantee you it will not be there on November 10th. And that, I think, is where I scratch my head when you look at farmers that say, well, yeah, of course, I'm hiring a plane and I'm putting on fungicide. Well, why? That hybrid doesn't respond to fungicide, and your stand on June 10th is not great. Save that money. It's better spent on some other field that really is in the hunt, that really is proven its point. So I think these are just a couple of quick things that apply to everyone, whether your planter is 25 years old or 25 minutes old. Don't trust your red, green, blue OEM dealers to just say, well, they took care of it. No, they didn't. You need to take care of it. And these are some simple things you can do to knock off your checklist on how to optimize your planter for some really good performance.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Ed. We got a little bit of time here in your 20-minute segment. There are, again, if you guys want any Q&A for Ed Kasper here, there's at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button that says Q&A. Please type that and add a question. We'll read them off here. As we wait to see if there's any questions that do come in here, Ed, you and I were talking yesterday about some of your leading indicators here on snow caps in the Rockies and the Lake Michigan. I don't, if you want to divulge that and give away some trade secrets, that would be great too.
It's very unscientific. Let's put it that way. Back in 2012, I was following guys on Twitter, and towards the end of that year, of course, that drought, that kicked us in the tail, they're all high-level dudes, and they go skiing. And towards the end of 2012, they all said the same thing on Twitter. They said, we should have known this, because when we were flying out to our ski resorts, the Rockies were bare. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And I don't know how I tripped upon it, but I started following the Great Lakes ice coverage percentage. And you could just Google that, look it up anytime. NOAA tracks it very closely. And in 2012, we had, I think, less than 15% ice coverage on the Great Lakes. And what I've noticed is when I go to tractor pulls in June and I'm wearing a hooded sweatshirt at night, we're on our way to a good shot at some good corn yields. When it's June nights and it's hot and it's sticky already, that's going to be a tough summer to get through. We want the temperatures below 70 degrees at night so that corn plant can relax, rebuild, and then hit it during the day. August is August. August is going to be a dogfight with the temperatures. But if you can delay that pain, the more ice we get on the Great Lakes, it seems to coincide with the better national yields we have on corn. The more snow we have on the Rocky Mountains, and right now they're sitting pretty good, the better chances we have of getting some timely rainfalls through the season.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing as much of that. I know you're saying it's a somewhat proven hypothesis, but more to come maybe on it. Yeah. But I like the insight. So I do have two questions here. We've got about 2-3 minutes here before we wrap up your segment. And so one of the questions we have is, does even emergence pay on soybeans?
Yes, absolutely it does. We have done some flag testing on soybeans. As you might imagine, that's not an enjoyable experience, but we have seen results. What I've found on soybeans, we want to imbibe moisture equally, whether we're planting beans or corn. And that happens through consistent planting depth. With beans, planting them at 1.5 inches deep, for me, has been a tremendous improvement. The old theory of beans, just throw them out there, they'll grow. No, I want as good of a closing wheel system as possible. The spacing on soybeans, I did a little experiment last year I didn't notice anything significant on the spacing and singulation, but we've flag tested soybean emergence. And yes, absolutely, it does make a difference in the bottom line yield. And we're encouraging people to plant beans a little bit earlier, maybe drop your populations a little bit more. But that's individual preference. That all comes down to what Mr. Farmer can stomach.
Yeah, thanks. And then last question here is that, in your opinion, if a guy wanted to do one thing to his planter, what's the largest ROI attachment, and does it depend on the color of the planter? So different models of the planter.
Assuming he doesn't need more speed or more rows, there are two things that I have seen in the last 10 or 15 years that bar none pay you back, assuming we have like swath control, your row clutches, those always pay. And I really like hydraulic drives or electric drives, that kind of control. But otherwise, your hydraulic downforce, it does pay. It gives you so much control. This hydraulic cylinder is calibrating like something crazy, like 15, 20 times a second. Consistent down pressure on these gauge wheels. Hydraulic downforce is a big investment, but it pays and it gives you control that you didn't have before. The other thing that I'm switching over my planter, I'm taking in-furrow off my planter and I'm putting on a 2x2 on the back. You can get really expensive with 2x2. You can get really cheap. I prefer the cheap because it's Mother Nature. Get the groceries out there, she'll figure it out. There are no fertility products in furrow that will enhance emergence. It doesn't work that way. Some folks like the groceries in the furrow. I'm not going to argue, but there's nothing that will enhance emergence. But the 2x2x0, 2x2x3x2, however you want to work that out, I've seen that pay massive dividends. I had a customer last year. We put a system on his planter. He did some test strips. You could see it plain as day from the road. And when we went back through his data, he saw a 53 bushel bump from being able to band that fertility right at the row. So hydraulic downforce and a 2x2 system is your biggest kick, your biggest bang for the buck. And both of them can be beneficial on beans as well if you are using the same planter for corn and beans.
Excellent, thanks. One last one snuck in here that I'm going to have you answer before we let you go.
All right.
And that's, what's your thoughts on starter fertilizer for soybeans?
I'm still nervous in furrow for soybeans. I don't mind putting an insecticide in furrow. I don't mind putting a sugar in furrow. I kind of like the ideas of sugars to kind of, well, same as if I give a Snickers bar to my daughter Reagan, she's 10, a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew, and she's, bouncing off the walls. I want to excite the microbial activity once it hits 55 degrees. You're not going to trick Mother Nature, but you can enhance it. Fertility in furrow, I'm a little scared. This year for soybeans, I'm probably running a 1034-0, a sulfur, and to me, zinc, sulfur, and boron have become really important to me the last few years. So my soybean 2x2x0 will be a 1034-0, a sulfur, and a zinc, and probably a sugar. And with $11, $12 soybeans, it doesn't take long for that fertility to really pay off.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Ed, for your time and going a little bit ahead of schedule. We just want to make sure everybody was paying attention as we switch everybody up around here, So
keep it interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it and being adverse. So we're gonna cut back to Jennifer. It sounds like she's got her internet back going. So Jennifer, if you'd like to share your screen, if you've got the ability to do so, and then we'll pick up right where you left off if you're ready to do so.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Welcome to rural America, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in the middle of talking about the quality loss option. And again, this is the option that will allow a producer to replace their actual yields based on post-quality production in their APH with actual yields based on pre-quality. So it'll increase your APH and your 10-year average. And again, this quality loss option can only replace those yields or that APH when a notice of loss was timely filed for that crop. And it doesn't matter if you got an indemnity payment on that crop or not, but you had to have had a notice of loss timely filed. This is available for all plans of insurance and for select crops. And again, in our area, that's corn and soybeans are included with this option. So this is something that has to be added to your application at the sales closing deadline of March 15th. So if you're interested in this, talk to your crop insurance agent about adding it. It does affect your premium a little bit. So you want to make sure that you actually get a benefit out of it if you're going to add it. Okay, livestock insurance. This has been really big this last year because of the volatility of our market. And LRP, the livestock risk protection, this is actually really attractive to producers now, particularly because the subsidy rates have changed. And so it's a lot more affordable. So LRP protects against a decline in market price below the insured selected coverage price for fed cattle, feeder cattle, and swine. For 2021, your premium is now due at the end of the endorsement period instead of upfront, which is really nice because if you have an indemnity payment coming, they'll take your premium right out of the payment. So it gives you that chance to see if you have a payment coming, and then you don't have to, front your premium. And this chart shows your subsidy levels for the different coverage levels. So they've also increased head limits. So from 3,000 to 6,000 head per endorsement, and 6,000 to 12,000 head per year for fed cattle and feeder cattle. And then for swine, they've increased the limit from 20,000 to 40,000 per endorsement, and from 75,000 to 150,000 head per year. So that's pretty dramatic. They've also modified the ownership requirement from 30 days to 60 days. The endorsement length options have also increased. They're giving you more options to choose from, which I've got the numbers here listed: 30, 34, 39, 43, 47, and 52. Before, we only had about five endorsement lengths to choose from. So this gives you a much broader amount of time to choose from. Also, new feeder cattle and swine types for unborn animals have been added, but you must be able to show ownership of the mothers of the animals to be insured. So for DRP, for the dairy revenue protection, so this protects producers against the decline in quarterly milk revenue below a guaranteed coverage level on a producer's declared milk production quantity. Grade B has now been added. The non-fats solids test has been added for 2021, and they've increased your declared protein and butter fat levels. And this is when a farmer will choose component pricing versus class pricing when they secure an endorsement. So these aren't changes, but just a little summary of what the DRP is. Just to go over, the applications can be submitted any time of year, but it must be received by your agent before the sales closing date of the coverage that's requested under that quarterly endorsement. So for example, I'm quoting second quarter right now. So that's April, May, and June. And if a farmer wanted to lock in a price for second quarter, we would have to secure the endorsement by March 15th. So it's the 15th of the month prior to the endorsement or the quarterly endorsement period. So again, talk to your agent about this. I've been actually selling a lot of the DRP and LRP. Not all agents can sell it. There are training requirements and a certification that's given in order to do this. You can have livestock insurance with a different agent than your MPCI agent. And particularly if they don't sell it, you can use another agent. So just a quick summary on the ARC PLC. I'm sure several people already have this done, but if you haven't, you have to allocate by March 15th. When you signed up in 2019, that was for the 2019 and 2020 years. And now starting in 2021, you're going to elect annually. But it's only for program decisions. There's going to be no more yield updating and no more base acre reallocation. And you can make these decisions based on your farm FSA numbers. I know a lot of the FSA offices are still closed, and so they're requesting you call to make an appointment, and hopefully you can do everything remotely and you don't have to sit outside in this weather. And one thing to remember is if you do purchase the SCO option, the supplemental coverage option, you have to select or elect rather PLC on those crops. So these are recommendations, not my recommendations necessarily, but recommendations that I've gotten from reliable sources. The University of Wisconsin-Madison Extension Office and the University of Illinois. I wanted to provide both because my farmers, because I insure in both Wisconsin and Illinois. And I'm asked this question often, you know, what's the word on the street? So I can share, this is what I'm hearing. PLC for corn, ARC County for beans, PLC for wheat, ARC County for oats, and then sorghum, barley, sunflower seeds, PLC. So I do recommend you doing your own research for your own farm and what will work best for you. But I did want to share this. So again, thank you. I'm sorry for the glitch in my presentation. I think turning the camera off might have helped, but sign up for your crop insurance for 2021 is underway. And if you're interested in working with me for this coming year, my information is here on the screen. Otherwise, you can get a hold of Jeremy or even Carrie for that matter, and put you in touch with me. So thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jennifer. We've got just maybe slightly just a minute or 30 seconds or so for any Q&A. Again, if you guys want to post the questions for Jennifer, please use the Q&A tab that's in the bottom of the screen. Jennifer, as of right now, I don't believe we have any, so I appreciate you finishing up your presentation midstream with all of that and letting us shift things around here. At this point, I think we'll probably just we'll end up moving on. And if a question comes in that's related to your stuff, Jennifer, maybe what we'll do is if we have time at the end, we can certainly address it then. So if you would do me a favor, oh, perfect, you've already unshared your screen. So we're going to move on. The next presenter here is State Line Solar with their head of sales, Scott Burkhart. Scott will be presenting solar photovoltaic, sorry about that, systems and how this investment can benefit the ag industry. I know that German American is looking to be a little more sustainable. So Scott, we're grateful for you to be on and take us through solar.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. We appreciate jumping on here and talking some solar, a little different subject from what we have been talking about here, but we are starting to see more and more solar being installed on farms. We do solar residential farms, agriculture, and we also do some commercial as well. So we're located here in good old Lena, Illinois, just west of Freeport, right here on Main Street. We service an area about an hour and a half from Lena. It's about all the further out we'd like to go because we also do our own service work. So we want to be able to service people after the install as well. So ready to go. This one. Can we get rid of that? So our mission is to preserve the earth to the best of our abilities and offer the community the best quality care and natural energy. We take pride in our environment and our work. Why solar? Well, solar is getting more and more popular. It's really taken off like in the last 5 years. There are two main reasons we go solar. It's good for the environment. It's clean energy. The sun comes up every day. Well, even on cloudy days, the sun does come up. We have had a lot of clouds here lately. Even on cloudy days, though, your solar will make some power. The other reason we go solar is to save money. And in the long run, a solar system will save farmers and well, anyone that goes solar will save them a lot of money. The other reason we do it, it does add value to your property. But the great thing about solar is it doesn't get taxed. It's about the only improvement you can make on your property without your property tax bill going up. This is just a basic solar 101. Here's how solar works. When we mount panels, this is just a picture. What you're seeing is a roof mount. We also do a lot of ground mounts. I'm sure you folks have seen a bunch of them. When sun hits the panels, it actually makes DC current. Well, DC is great for batteries, but we need AC current to power up our lights and whatever else we need to power up on our property. So we'll mount an inverter. The wire will go through the inverter. Now we have AC power. Okay, it then connects to your property either through a breaker box or the meter itself, whichever is the less invasive, whatever code lets us do, we will do. Priority is always your property, your farm, your house, your business, whatever we're powering up here. We power that up first. That's the priority. On sunny days, when there's overproduction, this is the fun part. The overproduction goes back out through the smart meter, back out onto the grid. So if you've heard any of our commercials, it says your meter actually runs backwards. It actually is running backwards. Power's going the opposite way. We're pushing power out on the grid. And the great thing about our net metering laws here in Illinois, and every state is different. I guess I'm just going to touch base on Illinois for now. The great thing about our net metering laws is you get full credit for what you push out on the grid. So in other words, if you're paying 8 cents for your 8 cents a kilowatt hour for your power, when you push power on the grid, you're getting credit for 8 cents. Now you won't get a check for that, but they will keep track of that in terms of overproduction. It will show on your bill how much overproduction you have accrued. The idea is when the days are nice and long, say April through September, maybe October, you're probably going to overproduce many of those months. Then you have those kilowatt hours banked, and then you can use them in the winter months like now when the days are short and keeps your electric bill low year round. Our process, here's how we do this. It's pretty simple. If you're interested at all in solar, we need to see your power bill, front and back, especially if it's a ComEd bill. That tells us everything we need to know. Excuse me. That way we know how much power you use and how much you're paying for it. And then we can design a system correctly. How many panels does it take? How much are we going to save you? How much is your monthly bill now year round? How much will your bill be? Okay, so we have our designer is in-house, and by the way, everything we do is in-house. We don't sub stuff out. Our in-house designer will put together a proposal, an array. I would come and I can either email it to you, or I could come, if you're comfortable with that, come and meet with you one-on-one and go over it with you. We sign a solar contract. We get your system installed. The install time is generally about 60 days from the sign time, simply because it just takes that long to get the permitting and everything, inventory and everything lined up to do it. And then once you're installed, you start saving money. Designing your system. When you send us your power bill, obviously we're going to look at satellite images of your farm or your house. The software we use is called Aurora Solar. It's a really good, accurate, honest software that uses LiDAR. 3 things we can do with that. We can figure shading if there's trees in the way, silos, corn bins, things like that. Takes into account dust or dirt. You're not required to wash your solar panels. We wait for Mother Nature to wash them. If we get 2 or 3 weeks where it doesn't rain and you live on a gravel road, you're going to get some dust on them. It takes that all into account. And also snow and ice. Like right now, we've had a pretty snowy winter. We live in the upper Midwest. We are going to get some snow and ice. So it's pretty cool. We can figure out, you know, you're going to make this much power. You're going to save this much per month. Permitting and applications. we do all of this. Once you sign that solar contract, you've done your part, now we do our part. First thing we have to do is ask, around here anyway, ComEd owns all the power lines. You can buy your power from whoever you want. In other words, your supplier. ComEd owns all the power lines, so they're always the delivery person. We're going to connect your solar system to their grid, so we have to ask for interconnection. So we'll apply for that. Depending on where you live, there's going to be city or county permits. We'll apply for them. And then we also have to ask ComEd for net metering, which I touched base on before. This stuff all has a application fee. Everything is included in the price. Once you sign a solar contract, we don't come back and ask for any more money. Here's just, if you're looking at this, gives you some ideas of different mounts. We do all kinds of mounts. The one on the left obviously is a shingled roof, like say a house. Some older farm buildings will have shingles on them. We also do a lot of steel roofs, like on a pole building. Standing seam roofs, which you see a lot of that on houses nowadays. Obviously for a shingled roof, we're going to snap line. We have to hit a truss, or purling, we have to hit something solid, okay? The lower right picture shows on a steel roof. We do get questions, is this going to leak if I do this? If it's done correctly and we do things correctly, it won't leak. Some more examples here. This is a steeper steel roof. This shows the rails. They get mounted first, and then the panels obviously bolt to the rails. The picture on the right is an optimizer. We use optimizers, one for each panel. Those get bolted on first. The panels get bolted onto that, and from there on out, it's plug and play. A couple more examples here. This is a nearly completed system on the left picture there. The right picture, clear to the right, the white box, that's the inverter, and that's all the bigger they are. They're not that big. This particular installation had a Generac generator, so there is an extra ATS switch, automatic transfer switch we had to install. That's mounted next to the inverter there. Quickly too, we are a Generac dealer. We also do standby generators and battery systems. Some more examples here. Couple nice, there's three nice roof mounts on barns. The upper right one is this is what our ground mounts look like, and this is a split ground mount. The reason it's split is it was just a matter of how much room we had. There just wasn't enough room to put everything in one row. We can do 2 rows. In fact, we just finished one Monday that was a split ground mount. Incentives. There are quite a few incentives out there that help us pay for solar. I'm talking residential first. So if you have a residential power bill, which most of us that live in houses are just kind of residential. Some farms have residential bills. Some have commercial bills. Okay. The first really great incentive we have is a 26% federal tax credit. Okay. That's based on what you pay for your solar system. So do simple math. If you buy a $20,000 solar system, you now have a $5,200 federal tax credit. And I'm sure you all have used tax credits before, know what they are. That just reduces what you owe the federal government on your taxes. That's something you talk to your accountant or tax preparer about to make sure you can use it. The other great incentive, we touched base on that on the How Solar Works screen, the 1-for-1 net metering, which is very important. Again, when you overproduce in the summer, those kilowatt hours can be banked, and then you could use them in the winter. Each state has different metering. Illinois has 1-for-1 net metering. Wisconsin and Iowa, their net metering isn't quite as attractive. Theirs isn't 1-for-1, but they do also have net metering that helps. Get into commercial now, commercial solar incentives. If you have a commercial bill, there's a ComEd Smart Inverter incentive, and this is a cash refund. It's $250 per DC kilowatt. That's a very nice incentive to have. Solar, this is one of the greatest things, especially for you farmers out there. Solar can be depreciated. There's 3 different ways you can depreciate it. Again, talk to your accountant. So this is no different than buying a tractor, trading combines. It can be depreciated. There also are REAP grants that may be available. REAP is Rural Energy for America program. You would have a grant writer do that for you. We have a list of grant writers that can help you with that. That can pay up to $20,000 toward your solar system. There's a couple different ways you can apply for it. You can actually apply for more than that also. And also keep in mind, commercial receives the same incentives that the residential had, the 26% federal tax credit and the 1-for-1 net metering. Additional incentives, again, we're hounding on that net metering, but that's very important. That's just an outstanding incentive to have. We mentioned this a little before, investment in your property. Property values increase, taxes do not. Again, depreciation, you can depreciate it 3 different ways. Again, talk to your accountant or tax preparer about that. One other, this is an Illinois incentive, SREC, Solar Renewable Energy Credits. This is an Illinois incentive. Okay, this incentive came out about 3 years ago. It's a really neat program. Actually, what they did, there were other states like, I believe, Massachusetts and Washington that did this exact same thing years ago. Illinois kind of copied it. It was or it is a really nice incentive. When they wrote it, they thought there was going to be 4 years capacity in it. It went over so well, it only lasted 3 years. So it did run out of capacity in December. We're hoping the state legislature puts more capacity in it when they meet here in the spring. There is a bill downstate awaiting that. What's going on now is new PV installs, in other words, people that sign a solar contract are being put on a wait list. So when they do put more capacity into it, those on the wait list are going to get funded first. So that's what we know about that. We're hoping they do their job. The money's there, they just have to get more capacity put into it. And that's kind of an overview on solar from us here at State Line and good old Lena.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it. We actually have 2 questions so far.
Okay.
First question is, are the Generac generators cost included in the federal and state energy tax credits, or is it just for the solar system?
Generac generators are not, because they do burn fossil fuel, so you do not get the tax credits on that. If you did decide the other way to do backup energy is a battery system, those do qualify for the tax credits.
Got it. Thank you. And then second question is, could a ground mount service a home and either barn or / outbuilding?
Say that again.
So a ground mount panel service, is that satisfactory, or does it have the ability to service a home and outbuilding or barn?
Oh yeah, it could. We can only hook solar up to 1 meter. Some farms have 2 meters. There are times we can do virtual net metering where we can have the ComEd will let us tie the meters together, but generally the solar system is only hooked up to 1 meter and it'll backfeed to all outbuildings. So I guess the answer is yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we got another one that's coming in here too. I guess probably asking about longevity. How long do solar panels last, and what do you do with them when they no longer work?
That's a very good question. I should have covered that a little better. All of the solar, there's 3 major components to a solar system: the panels themselves, the inverter, and the optimizers we use. Everything we install has a 25-year performance warranty. So that doesn't mean when the panels have their 25th birthday, they shut off, of course. Panels do degrade over time. They lose some of their production value just because they sit out in the sun. But the panels we use have a 92% performance warranty, which means in year 25, they should still be putting out 92% of what they did on day 1. As far as disposing them, I guess we'll worry about that in 25, 30 years. There are environmental issues. You can't just throw them in a landfill, but I know they can be recycled. We've been in business about 4 years. Obviously, we haven't run into that yet.
Gotcha. All right. So more to come on that one. All right, well, I think I mean, that takes care of the solar portion. I don't see any other questions in here. You've got the contact information to get a hold of State Line Solar if you'd like to look at that option. Scott, if you want to just real quick unshare your screen. I just want to kind of close out here with everybody and just say thank you for attending today's event. What we'd really like is some feedback. If you like these events, if you like this format, and perhaps maybe even some topics that we could cover in the future. To give us some feedback, you could always go to our website, again, which is www.germanamericanstatebank.com. Down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a contact us link. And if you click that, we could always capture your feedback from there. And also feel free to message us on either LinkedIn and or Facebook. Again, thank you for attending. I appreciate it. Thanks for the presenters. Feel free and be sure to check out our website, our Facebook, like us. And we just want you guys to know that we're looking to do some of this stuff and and put these types of concepts together and show that our commitment to agriculture. So thanks a lot for the time today, guys. This concludes our presentation.